everyone, welcome to the area that is moon moth and this area which is papillon. And you know, we normally gift, which we do behind us, and we've got a few little interesting things along the way that I'll try and show you. Okay. This is interesting over here. We have seen it before, but I'm just curious. There's a lot of water lying, sorry, squelching around, there's so much water. I'm curious about this. So we've got this up right here, and it's bending off up to the top left of the screen. You can see that there. Try and follow it up. And I am very curious. Just stepping over a tiny glyph, but I'm going to go back to it. So I'm just curious by this. It's quite long. It's about 5 meters long. And then we've got this little one that crosses over here. But there was just a small glyph here, tiny. But the fact that there's two very obvious Y shapes in there might just be purely coincidence. Look at that. Isn't that wonderful? That's for free, folks. We don't have to pay for that. That's all for free. Wow. It's all for free, folks. So I'm just going to make my way around behind here. Now, like I say, I think there might be some change with these glyphs before April the 8th. Curious to see. Wow, look at that. Isn't that just amazing? It's a beautiful, beautiful day. It was heavy rain this morning, and you can see by the amount of water lying. All of these little ridges are all full of water. That looks like a grid. You might be saying, well, why don't you just ask what all these things mean? I do, and I have. And I think we have to find this stuff out. We're being asked to find this stuff out. And I think if we guess correctly, then we'll get the affirmation. But I think it's far more connected than we know. There's far more going on with this than we know, than we can actually really understand. Alright, so just keep going around here. Now this isn't new. See this? It's actually quite deep. I think that's probably about 8 inches deep. Don't really want to stand it if I can help it. I just want to scoot past that one. Got that in the distance. See that? I have this here. Being asked to use our discernment on this, so already I've spotted You see it too? Just one bag. Holes in the bottom. The whole bottom of it's completely been ripped, shredded. Nothing in it. Must have enjoyed that one. And these shadows are amazing. The way the sunlight comes through here. What I will say actually today is the logging teams are in today. If I come here on a Sunday, it's usually quiet, but the logging teams are in, and it's a Monday today, and they are up and down this road with their huge, hideous trucks. Yeah, so we've got all the bags here. Everything appears to be empty. So, big rip in the middle of that one. It's wet. Just holes at the side. There's another one here. Probably had something manky in it. And then you can see the fruit bags, how they're glistening with the wet. There, oh, I must have had 5 bags last time. And a net on the floor. Put that on there. I have to use my knife and cut those off. Interesting how the top of that bag is folded over. Okay by me. Right, I'm going to take all those back with me. What I'm going to do is I'm going to set up the camera for the other goodies. Alrighty. The first bag I have is Brazil nuts. The second one, hazelnuts. And then the third one, these are figs. These are dried, so like dried figs. Then I've just got some cashew nuts. That's all I've brought with me this week, actually. So we'll try and light a few. Alright, so let me pop this in. One there. One there. One there. Have one over there, I think. And another one there. I wanted to talk to you today really about the elements and alchemy. And I prepare the videos for quite some time before I actually do them and set up what I'm going to say in my head. And I felt Athenian tap me on the shoulder, said, "It's too dry, too dry." Make it a bit more interesting. So it's all about alchemy, and it was Athenian who gave me the title, Alchemy. So I'll say thank you for that. In the forest, I'm going to try and insert some photographs from previous times, but in the forest we find star-shaped glyphs. They're not necessarily five-pointed, sometimes they're a very weird stretchy shape, sometimes they can be disrupted, and it might be by animals, whatever, but they're usually star-shaped glyphs that we see. Some are vertical and they're standing upright, and they look like a real mishmash, almost like a satellite receiver, which is what they are, I believe. Information gatherers as such. And others can be on the ground, completely flat. So along the way through this I'll try and show you some different ones. Now there's many different schools of thought regarding these pentagrams, which is what they are. They're a pentagram. And they've got each point of that star represents a different element. So there is one school of thought which is spirit, air, water, earth and fire. And they're represented by the different symbols of the star shape, the pentagram. So in this forest, well, we certainly have spirit, we certainly do. And it's the means from which the Zenu people and the elementals communicate through the ether. We also have water, plenty of it actually. It's like everywhere around here is well over flooded. So we have plenty of water. We get that from the rain, and there are underground soaks underneath here, the type of stone that this ground sits on. Then there are fire. Now we don't have much in the way of fire because the forest is constantly damp and wet, so it wouldn't really take hold. But if we had a very dry summer, we would have fire, and that could come from bushfires or lightning. There are one or two trees that have been affected by lightning. Then we have earth, the earth from which we stand, and then the air, which we've seen in the savage storms that have ripped the forest apart. So that's one version of the pentagram and what they mean. There is another version, which are the 5 elements of life, which is oxygen, hydrogen, nitrogen, phosphorus and carbon. So oxygen, O2, we find in the atmosphere. It's what I'm talking, it's how I manage to survive because I have particles of oxygen that I breathe in. We cannot survive as a planet without it. Then there's hydrogen, sometimes written as H2, sometimes just H, and it's the lightest element, also key to our survival. Then there's nitrogen, sometimes written as N2. That makes up around about 78%, 78.09% of the air that we breathe. Nitrogen gas, slightly lighter than air and slightly soluble in water. Then there's phosphorus, which is just known as P, which is vital in formation of our bones and the teeth. It's essential to help our bodies use and store energy. It also helps us in regulating our kidneys and our nerve functions, our muscle contractions and our heartbeats, and is vital for the normal functioning of every cell in our body. Then we have carbon, and that's the 15th most abundant element on the Earth's crust, and the 4th most abundant element in the universe by mass after hydrogen and helium and oxygen. So carbon is the most common element of all known life forms. It's the 2nd most abundant element in the human body by mass, by about 18.5% after oxygen. So our atmosphere, it's all made up, mixture of gases, and they, contains about 78% of nitrogen, 21% of oxygen, 1% of argon, and 0.04% of carbon dioxide, the air we breathe, the cows breathe in, sheep breathe in and breathe out, and then 0.05% is water vapour. So these are all things that pentacle, the 5-star pentagram should I say, these are all things that the pentagram could represent. That's 2 schools of thought. Then there is another one, which I think they call it like the 5-element theory, which is wood, fire, earth, metal and water. So we've mentioned earth and fire before and water, but wood. It's all around us, these trees. We know where the fire comes from. Metal in the ground, very likely in the ground. And these are elements, all these 5 can mix these components. These are what shape the planet in one way or another. So all of these different theories of what the 5 points of the star, the pentagram, mean could be relevant. Whether any one of those could be represented within this forest. This is maybe why one of the most common shapes of glyphs that we see in the forest are star-shaped. Some are huge, like I say, some are small. And it may be the reason why the 5 points of the star shape in this forest, it might be one of the reasons, and it's probably one of the connotations, one of the combining of all these different types of elements and possibilities. It's how we live, being pointed to, you need these to live. And it's what our earth is created from and what we need to exist. So are you giving thanks to it by putting it in this, or are you using this pentagram shape, this star shape, to ask for more of this because you have too much of that, or whatever? Or is it just directing energy to attract these type of elements in? So often, we've seen in the forest, whether large or small, this star shape, and I've got quite a few photographs I think that I've posted over the years of star-shaped glyphs. Sometimes it's upright, sometimes it's standing as a solitary type of sentinel, sometimes flat on the ground, and we are being told something here. Some of us have assumed that they are telling us that they are star people, which I think that has some merit, and that they are guided by the stars, as are we from planet Earth. We don't think we are, but we are. We don't appreciate it, I'm sure, but whatever goes on up there in the heavens, as people might refer to it, out in the universe and the many galaxies, is vital to what goes on down here. It affects everything. So that might be why they're saying star people. You need to look at what's going on up around you and what's going on the ground, the elements. You need to look at what's going on there to understand, our existence. Okay? So I believe the star-shaped glyphs are a communication of some sort. It's like an educational guide and a tool for us. Maybe we're just too busy scrolling on our cell phones, or working, because that's the nature of how we survive, working, that we miss all of these signs, that we literally fall over, because those of us that are going out into the forests are walking through the trees. Most people say, I'm going for a walk in the forests. They're not. They're going for a walk on the forest tracks. They're not actually walking in the forest. So there's a lot more to it than that. So we're only going to see, I mentioned earlier about the eclipse, and we're only going to see a brief bit of that, if any of it. Like I said, I'm going to be here at 6 AM on the morning of the 8th, and we'll see how it goes. I don't think there's going to be enough daylight to actually get a good view, and if it's chucking it down with rain, then I might as well forget it. There's no point. Like I say, the sun's very temperamental here. We're grateful when it does arrive. So to relate this 5-pointed star, the 5 points of the pentagram, to our world today, there's many different things. It's a strong shape because it's made up of triangles, but think of something in your world, particularly in America. The Department of Defense, and that building is in Arlington, the Pentagon, and it's built to house the 3 services, the Air Force, Navy and the Army. And I'm thinking, as it's 5 stars of the pentagram, there should be 2 others in there, so I'm guessing one of them would be intelligence. And I would also say there's another one, which is the early pre-runners of AI, the early pre-runners of remote viewing and thought. So it's like an ethereal, esoteric department. That's my guess. I don't know, that's just a guess. But there you have. It's not, shall we say, it's not without reason why they have the Department of Defense. It's a star-shaped building, a pentagon, called Pentagon. I find that quite fascinating. It's also believed that in our human defense, we defend ourselves against darkness, dark energy. We're not comfortable in the dark. We switch lights on, but we're not comfortable with dark energy. It's not good, it's destructive, and we always like to produce light, be bearers of light. And it's the same with, for example, the Pentagon. Anybody who is dabbling in the dark arts won't get near it. They're protected by their remote viewers and by light protection. And they do what we do, protecting ourselves with light, and people say love and light, and they look to a higher being, a higher force. They protect themselves in exactly the same way, because everything and everybody is vulnerable to that. So you need to protect. We want to put light in the darkest corners. And that was just an example of how strong that shape is. And we see it, like I say, as a living example in the Pentagon, in the Department of Defense. Now, I'm quite sure that all of these big alphabet organizations will all deny till they're blue in face that there are no unseen forces of darkness at play. We all know what it feels like to go into an empty dark house you've never been in before at night time. You wouldn't like it. You won't catch me here in the dark at night time. You will not catch me here for love nor money. Same thing. Exactly the same thing. And so we need to protect ourselves, and we do protect ourselves. We use all sorts of forms of protection from our higher source, and it's, you know, the defense systems of these countries, also the United States of America. Second World War, Winston Churchill certainly knew a lot about the occult and how to repel it. And I think that we as humans do the same. Now, a lot of people have referred to Bigfoot, forest people, being very, very scary, alone in the forest by themselves at night. So if they were there in the daytime and suddenly they get the glimpse, it's a different feeling. But I think they may get the sense that they're about to be eaten or something like that. Well, I mean, if I'm standing here, I'm 5'8". I'm not really a dwarf. But if a Bigfoot would stand beside me, my head would come up to probably the bottom of their rib cage. That sort of area, their rib cage. that's, I mean, and I would look like a short arse beside them. That's quite intimidating if you see somebody like that and you go, oh my God, you know, it's quite intimidating. So we're intimidated by size, and I think that's a lot of the problem. But there are energies, and their energy is vast and strong, and we're going to go into that in the next video. All of these elements, they make us. They make us what we are. Too much of one element or too little, and we cannot function, we cannot fuse together, we cannot combine them. We are overloaded. So the people, I believe, the forest people, are often in areas where there are a combination of the 5 elements, depending on what elements that you wish. Doesn't matter which combination that I've just gave to you earlier, there's a combination of those, and they're in those elements. They'll locate themselves there. So it may be that the metals are actually precious metals. We all have gold naturally in our body. We've got lots of different metals that we use, that we don't use for physical creation of stuff, but we need around us. So as Athenian is sort of showing me, mentally, as it were, a crane. And a crane can lift incredibly heavy objects, but it needs to be balanced, needs to be counterbalanced by heavy weights, usually, I think it's usually lead. And the crane is a fulcrum, a pivot that's used to counterbalance. So the areas that are strong in minerals reserves are where energy can be stored or transferred to where it needs to be, to where there is an imbalance. So she's actually shown me inner Earth, middle Earth, planet Earth, and how we attract that. So the school of thought about the forest people being somewhere underground where they can have a community, if you like, safely underground, could be something in that. So planet Earth attracts attention from its energy. So, for example, if we have too much of a particular element, you'll find we get masses of rain in Pakistan, and yet Ethiopia, desperate for the rain, doesn't get any. You find that the Daintree and, say, up in the Kakadu, plenty of rain, and yet you go to Longreach, Outback, they don't see rain for 7 years, and then when it comes, it forgets to stop raining. So there's an abundance which is in huge amounts, and somebody has to balance this out. And it's just a thought. I'm wondering if this is one of the jobs of the forest people, to use their energy and the glyphs that we see to balance out what is happening in our areas. So on a basic scale, if one person is angry, or 10 people are angry, 1,000 people are angry, that energy is felt. You can feel when somebody comes into the room, you can feel their general mood. Oh, that's a right little thundercloud on their face, isn't it? Or, you know, whatever. You can feel, oh, they're full of beans, they're so joyous. You know, you can kind of see someone's... Well, if you multiplied a happy person by 10, it would just bounce off everybody. You'd all be overjoyed. But if you had anger and rage, you'd feel that. And that needs to be counterbalanced. The energy is felt. And what Athenian is showing me is like a ripple in a pond. You drop a pebble in and those ripples just keep going. Keep going. So it's very important for us to check ourselves, checks and balances about our mood swings and things, and I've had to learn that because I can be a stroppy old mare when I want to be. And other days I'm just silly, just like to laugh all day. So we need to have checks and and balances on how we are. And I just wonder if that's what a lot of these glyphs are. Now, they don't watch the news, they don't have a TV screen, they don't watch the news, but they sense the energy, they feel the vibration. And I'm just wondering if they feel that with planet Earth, what we're doing in certain areas, wherever they're located, and they need to rebalance that, and that's what these glyphs are. And they're hoping we notice them, because they're usually by roadsides. They're usually, I mean, I'm not 16,000 miles in a forest where nobody walks. Half a mile that way is a road. About half a mile, 3/4 of a mile that way, over a river, is a track, another track. It doesn't reach into here, but it's not actually out of the way. So I'm going to leave you with that. This is alchemy. We are alchemy. What we see is alchemy. I'm going to leave you with that for now. Thank you. And goodbye.